So 2.2 is out, hooray, amazing, crazy new stuff going on. We've got platformer mode, the swing game mode, lots of fun orbs, and an even crazier recent tab. Despite all of these great new additions to the game, there are a few game-breaking features and bugs that have been found that will no doubt be fixed in the future update. However, there is one intentional feature in this new update that's been breaking more than just a few levels, and even has the potential to destroy an entire playstyle. This of course is the new physics change. Traditionally, the physics in Geometry Dash are automatically set through the monitor that you use. Most monitors or screens have a set refresh rate of 60. This means that the monitor is only able to show a maximum of 60 frames on the screen, because that's the maximum speed that the screen can refresh. But these days, pro players have screens that can refresh up to 360 times per second, which not only gives them a significant frame rate advantage, but also a physics advantage. Because Geometry Dash has a bizarre physics engine that sort of adjusts itself and makes momentum and gravity fairer on higher refresh rates compared to lower refresh rates, which is why it's so much easier to straight fly on 144Hz than it is on 60Hz. To be honest, 144Hz physics is probably the reason why there are no victors of Bloodbath until Riot revealed that he used 144Hz. Anyway, in 2.2, RobTop has made some adjustments to the physics engine so that the physics have been capped at 240 FPS. This means that 60Hz players can benefit from the physics-based advantage of 240Hz without having to buy an expensive 240Hz or above monitor, and everyone has a common physics engine to work with for auto levels and the like. However, there are some very significant disadvantages that come with the physics change. The first of these is that you cannot benefit from physics above 240Hz, or in other words, the physics on refresh rates such as 280Hz, 300Hz, 360Hz, and 500Hz are unable to be utilized, which caps off any extra physics-based advantages that a player could potentially get from those monitors. And due to these physics changes, it may take a while for 60Hz players to get used to 240Hz physics and 360Hz players to get used to 240 physics. But then again, that is a temporary issue that will take time to adjust to. But of course, the greatest concern with these drastic physics changes comes from the pro player community. As we are currently in an era of the divination of difficult levels, essentially meaning that most of everyone's focus, pre-2.2 that is, was focused on creating and verifying the hardest levels possible. And because of this era, in the past few years we've seen multiple very talented players rise to fame such as Trick, Cursed, Diamond, Denny, Doggy, Taigo, and Zoink, who are known for beating and verifying the top 20 hardest levels in the game. Nearly all of these players have 360Hz monitors or use Mega Hack to bypass to 360Hz physics, and are used to playing the game this way. Once 2.2 released, however, physics have been locked at 240Hz, so all of the levels that have previously been beaten are now harder than what they were. Pro players have been noticing the ship game mode is a little heavier than what it was, and the cube gravity as well appears to be altered somewhat, making cube-based timing sections a lot harder than what they were. But the bigger issue is that since that nearly all of the top 20 have been beaten on 360Hz, it technically means that in the current state of the game, it hasn't been proven that these levels are still possible. Well, I mean, it's highly likely that they are possible, but from now on, all those levels are going to be a lot harder to beat, and previous standards for what we had for difficulty in 2.1 might need to drop a bit. In fact, the Demonlist released a statement on the 20th of December reading, "Due to the physics change in 2.2, certain levels have been rendered significantly more difficult or even impossible. Current placements are inaccurate when comparing 2.1 and 2.2 difficulties. As a result, we will temporarily be excluding 2.2 difficulty opinions, ranking levels based off their difficulty in 2.1 instead, to maintain a loose order of placements while we move forward into 2.2. Locked physics isn't the only new issue in 2.2 that makes things harder for the pro player community, or even just the player community with this next one. Well, you see, there's also some new slope bugs. Back in 2.1, there was our fair share of slope bugs, and it was rumoured that once 2.2 released, all of those slope bugs would be fixed. However, it appears that trying to fix the slope bugs just ended up creating way more issues. Slopes now have quite a few new physics changes, which makes some of the levels a lot harder than what they previously were, and other levels are left physically impossible. Such examples include Oblivion, where the 6% ball click is impossible. Nelv and God Eater are also now impossible due to a robot slope bug being patched. The ship in Sonic Wave was temporarily the hardest part of the level until it was fixed by Cyclic. There's one slope at the start of Windy Landscape at 3%, which is a near frame perfect timing, or maybe it's even luck based at this point. Limbo is now also impossible due to the many slope gimmicks, and even a gauntlet level, Great White North, was temporarily impossible until it was fixed due to the slope bugs. Some of these bugs aren't even slope based. For example, the Green Orb at 20% in Black Blizzard has no slopes around it, and yet, probably due to the new 2.2 physics, is now impossible. There also appear to be a few common bugs regarding toggle orbs and UFOs. For example, in Knights of Thunder, there's a section at 3% where if you hit a toggle orb with a UFO and the UFO doesn't hop, however in 2.2, the UFO hops and you die. There's a similar bug in Dark Odyssey as well regarding a toggle orb and a UFO. Thankfully, many of these creators have gone to bug fix their levels to remove the bugs and fix the levels to try and get them to play as well as they did in their 2.1 counterparts. I have a feeling that this is what's going to happen to pretty much every major level of bugs. Because, you see, the idea behind the whole 240 FPS physics and the new slope physics is RobTop's way to try and create a unified physics system across platforms, so that levels built on mobile play the same as they would on PC, and levels built on PC will play the same as the levels built on mobile, no matter what refresh rate you might have. The slope fixes are meant to make slopes act the same on every frame rate. However, in some cases, this turned into an absolute disaster. So now it's up to the creators to try and do their best to fix all the levels that are bugged if they can. But what I fear the most about these bugs is that inevitably, there will be some levels that will never be fixed. And that's not to say they could be fixed, but rather they won't be. Because there are so many old creators from the 2.0 era and earlier who have built very popular levels that may have bugs in them that render them impossible. However, many of the creators have nothing to do with the game at all anymore, and will probably never end up fixing their levels, leaving the levels to eventually become unrated and then lost to time. But regarding the physics crisis, there is one thing that I hear no one talking about, and this situation is probably the saddest of them all, and that's the impossible levels list. Most of the levels on the impossible levels list require an FPS count and therefore a physics value that is way higher than 360 FPS, let alone 240 FPS, and they use obscure objects and slope bugs in order to increase their insane difficulty. Due to this fact, I can almost guarantee that 90% of the levels on the list that are harder than Avernus, which is the currently hardest rated level completed by a human in Geometry Dash, are now physically impossible due to the new physics changes. And it's not like fixing these levels is going to be easy, or even a thing that someone might attempt to do, because making an ILL level, especially a top 200 ILL level, is a science. Obstacles have to be in exact places to create ridiculous timings, and one readjustment could mess up an entire level, especially when there's an alignment-based click or there's a click counter involved. And there are so many of these levels on the list, with so many numerous creators, that it would be impossible to try and fix all of these levels. So this puts ILL in a very weird position, as a level can't be on the list if it's physically impossible. But if these levels are now physically impossible, then what is the list left with? Does it have to rename itself? Does it have to start from scratch and start over again? But there is hope. Absolute has been busily working away at the latest update to Mega Hack, which is built to work with 2.2 and will have a whole bunch of related features that will elevate many of the bugs and physics issues that we currently have in update 2.2. Currently there's a version 8 beta which works on 2.2 with some basic hacks such as no-clip, start position switcher, and copy hack. But once the full version is released, there will be two options regarding physics. The first of these is just a simple physics adjustment similar to what we already have in the options section of native Geometry Dash, where we can choose our FPS. This version is based on the 2.2 physics, and adjusting this number will only reduce input delay and nothing else. However, there is one other option, which is unlock physics, which will essentially revert Geometry Dash back to legacy physics and fix all those currently broken levels in Geometry Dash, and possibly all of those ILL levels as well. But then again, with ILL levels we can't really be sure because the way those things work can be a real science. Apart from that, most of the woes of pro players will be elevated. On the 24th of December, the Demonlist announced that its MegaHack V8 releases, records achieved using the 2.2 client are permitted to use an uncapped FPS value. This decision was made because FPS values about 240 serve no purpose other than to slightly lower input delay like any other PC game. Regarding the 2.2 physics bypass, we've decided to allow physics bypass up to 360 physics steps per second for 2.1 levels, and that levels verified after the release of 2.2 were not allowed to use the physics bypass at this time. So far, all these rules are subject to change regarding how the physics go with the hack client on release, but overall, this could be the solution to the ongoing physics crisis, and with both the unified and legacy physics in action, we can expect the player community to be back in its prime again, beating levels at the same skill range as 2.1 with the legacy physics options, and playing older levels with more challenging physics with the new physics model. New levels made with the unified physics model would be fairer across all platforms and could create a new standard of inclusivity across the Demonlist, or at least that's how I see it going after the release of the new hack client update and all of the dust from the crisis has settled down. But that's all from me today, and I'll see you in the next NINJADAN video you watch, whatever that might be.